Stop scrolling and listen carefully, because what I'm about to say will either crack open the version of you that's been sleepwalking through life, or you'll ignore it, shrug, and wake up a decade from now, wondering how you managed to stay stuck in the exact same place. A few days ago, I watched a man in a coffee shop quietly destroy his own dignity without even realizing it. He stood there across from someone who clearly didn't respect him. Arms crossed, bored expression, checking their phone, and for nearly half an hour he explained himself. He defended his choices. He justified his feelings. He apologized over and over, desperate to be understood by someone who had already decided his worth. He was talking as if his life depended on their approval, while they gave him crumbs of attention in return. When it was over, he walked away smaller, shoulders slumped, eyes empty. The other person didn't learn anything. They didn't change. They left with even more power over him than before. And as I watched, I realized I'd seen that scene play out 1,000 times. Different faces, different settings, same energy. Men explaining themselves to bosses who never respected them. Husbands apologizing to partners who treat them like an afterthought. Friends over-explaining to people who mock them in private. Maybe you recognize that posture. Maybe you've been that guy, rehearsing conversations in your head, overthinking every word, trying to convince someone not to throw you away. Maybe you've stayed in rooms where your presence wasn't valued because you were terrified of what leaving would say about you. You weren't born like this. No child is born begging for permission to be themselves. You were programmed into this role. From the earliest years, you were rewarded for being quiet, polite, nice, easy. Don't talk back. Don't make a scene. Be a good boy. Don't be difficult. Parents wanted peace, so you dampened your fire. Teachers wanted compliance, so you traded boldness for obedience. Society wanted predictability, so you learned to flatten your edges and hide your intensity. Year after year, you were trained to equate goodness with submission, kindness with self-betrayal, politeness with passivity. The world told you that if you didn't rock the boat, you'd be safe. But no one told you the full truth. Men who are too easy to manage are also too easy to ignore. The agreeable man gets invited, but rarely respected. He gets included, but never truly valued. He becomes the man people vent to, borrow from, lean on, but never the man they fear losing. Somewhere deep down, you feel the cost of that. You feel it every time you swallow an opinion because you don't want to start a problem. You feel it every time you accept a half-hearted apology and pretend everything is fine. You feel it when you walk away from a situation and spend hours thinking, why didn't I just say what I really thought? 5 centuries ago, one man decided to write down what everyone feels but almost no one dares to say. The world does not run on pretty slogans, it runs on power, perception, and human nature. While most of his time was obsessed with appearances, he studied results. While others recited noble principles, he watched what people did when fear, ambition, and survival kicked in. His name was Machiavelli, and he understood a brutal insight. Those who refuse to understand how power works become victims of those who do. He didn't write for the comfortable. He wrote for the men who are tired of being chess pieces and are ready to become players. This is where you stand now. Right now, there are 2 versions of you living inside the same skin. One is the uncertain self. He apologizes before he speaks. He laughs at jokes he doesn't find funny. He says, it's okay when it's not. He's constantly explaining himself, terrified someone might think poorly of him. His entire identity depends on how others react. Then there's the other version, the confident self. He's not loud for the sake of being loud. He doesn't need to dominate every conversation. He's calm, deliberate, measured. He knows his value with or without applause. He sets boundaries without lectures. He hears, I don't like that, and calmly replies, then it's not for you, and continues. He doesn't need to be feared, but he will never again tolerate being disrespected. Every day, through 1,000 small choices, you feed one and starve the other. When you say sorry for things that weren't your fault, you're buying food for the uncertain self. When you stay in a conversation that drains your soul just to avoid being rude, you're paying rent for the uncertain self to live in your head. When you explain and explain and explain to someone who is clearly not listening in good faith, you are sponsoring your own weakness. The strong self doesn't appear by accident. He's built with intention. The shift starts with awareness. You begin catching the uncertain voice in real time. That voice that says, maybe I should stay quiet so they don't think I'm difficult. That voice that whispers, don't walk away. They'll think you're overreacting. That voice that pleads, give them another chance. Maybe they didn't mean it that way, even after the 10th time. The strong self has a different language. He says, if you cross that line again, I'm gone. He says, my peace is more important than your approval. He says, I heard what you did. I believe you the first time. Machiavelli understood that the man who cannot command himself will be commanded by everyone else. This is why the first battlefield is internal. You don't become powerful by intimidating others. You become powerful by stopping the war inside you that constantly chooses others over yourself. That war is fought in your mind. Right now, your mind might feel like a constant storm. Overthinking, self-doubt, emotional roller coasters. A single negative comment can ruin your whole day. A delayed text response can hijack your concentration. A mistake at work can spiral into, I'm useless, I'm a failure, I'll never get it right. An untrained mind is like an open city with no walls. Any invader can walk in and take what they want. You need a fortress. A fortress doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means your feelings no longer hijack the throne. When someone criticizes you unfairly, your old self hears, they must be right, I'm not good enough. The fortress mind hears, interesting. Now I know how this person reacts when they feel threatened or insecure. When someone forgets you, ghosts you, disrespects your time, the old self thinks, what's wrong with me? The fortress mind asks, what did this reveal about their character, their priorities, their reliability? Most men are at the mercy of their emotional weather. Sunny feedback, they're confident. Slight rejection, they're worthless. Another person's mood becomes their fate. The fortress mind learns to separate signal from noise. You start asking better questions. Instead of, why don't they like me? You ask, why do I need them to? Instead of, how could they do this? You ask, what did this teach me about where I place my trust? Instead of, what if they leave? You ask, who will I become if I finally stop clinging to those who don't truly choose me? When your mind becomes a fortress, you're no longer easily pulled into chaos. People can try to provoke you and you'll feel the stirring, but you won't explode. You'll watch. You'll analyze. You'll decide. Your ability to pause before reacting becomes your superpower. That pause is where you reclaim your life. And in that pause, you discover the tool that terrifies insecure people the most: silence. The man who can't stand silence is rarely in control. He fills every gap with words because he's afraid of what others might think if he doesn't. He explains his decisions to strangers. He sends paragraphs when a sentence would do. He argues with everyone who questions him. He fights to be understood instead of deciding who is even worthy of understanding him. Influence doesn't live in endless explanation. It lives in selective speech. When you begin to use silence strategically, you'll watch the entire dynamic of your relationships change. Someone throws a wild accusation at you hoping to trigger a reaction. Instead of defending yourself for 20 minutes, you look at them, you say very calmly, no, that's not accurate, and then you stop talking. Someone presses you for details you don't want to share. Instead of spinning elaborate excuses, you say, I'm not going to talk about that, and then you wait. Someone tries to trap you into drama. Instead of crafting the perfect argument, you simply say, I'm not interested in this conversation, and physically remove yourself. At first, people will be shocked. They're used to you performing. They're used to pulling your strings and watching you dance. When the strings stop working, they'll pull harder. They might accuse you of being cold, distant, arrogant. That's fine. They're not describing you. They're describing their loss of control. Machiavelli knew that the unseen, the unpredictable, and the quiet often hold more power than the loud. When people can't easily read you, they start to fill in the gaps with their own imagination. They assume you know more than you say. They assume you're planning things they can't see. They assume your calm comes from strength, not emptiness. And as you become quieter on the outside, something else will rise on the inside. The memory of how many times you've been disappointed. Let's be honest. Disappointment is one of the deepest cuts a man can feel. The friend you'd defend with your life, he gossips about you when it benefits him. The partner you supported, they vanish when you hit your low point. The colleague you gave opportunities to, they undercut you as soon as it helps their climb. Most men aren't destroyed by random strangers. They're broken by the people they believed would never harm them. The average man responds to that by collapsing. He spends months replaying the betrayal. He questions his worth. He starts telling himself a story that he's cursed, that he's stupid for ever trusting anyone, that he should shut down completely and never open up again. But there's another way. Disappointment can either be your prison or your education. When you accept that humans act in their own interest first, that loyalty is rare, that pressure reveals true character, you stop being surprised and start being prepared. You stop placing people on pedestals and start observing their patterns. That person who is kind when life is easy but disappears under pressure, that's a data point. That friend who always has an excuse but never shows up when it really matters, data point. That partner who listens to your secrets and later weaponizes them in arguments, data point. Each disappointment becomes a lesson in human nature and in your own boundaries. You ask, what weakness in me allowed this? Where did I ignore my own standards because I wanted to believe a fantasy? Sometimes the right response to disappointment is decisive distance. No lecture, no grand confrontation, no final long message. You see what they did? You decide. You exit. Quietly. Forever. Sometimes the right response is a strategic adjustment. You keep them at arm's length, never again giving them the same level of trust, never depending heavily on someone who's already shown their capacity for disloyalty. Over time, you realize something important. People rarely disappoint those beneath them. They disappoint those they stand to gain from, those who are rising, those whose presence has value. In a twisted way, your disappointment is proof that you have something worth betraying. Wear that as a warning sign and as a compliment. While you're learning from disappointment, others are watching you. Some will criticize, some will mock your changes, some will say you've changed for the worse, simply because they can't exploit you like before. Your old self would have tried to convince them you're still the same, writing long messages, inviting them to see your heart. Your new standard is different. You don't argue with those determined to misunderstand you. You let your life speak. Criticism is inevitable. If you do nothing, they'll call you lazy. If you do something, they'll say it's not enough. If you succeed, they'll say you got lucky. If you fail, they'll say they knew it all along. Trying to manage everyone's opinion is a full-time job that pays nothing. Instead, you choose a different path. Excellence so consistent, criticism becomes background noise. When they say you can't, you don't send them proof. You send them silence while you keep building. When they belittle your goals, you don't lower them. You double down in private. When they question your methods, you let your results answer over time. Machiavelli would tell you the world is not swayed by complaints, but by outcomes. A man who delivers outcomes doesn't have to explain himself to those who deliver nothing but opinions. As your results accumulate, people's tones change. Some will still talk, but now there's a nervousness in their voice. Others will suddenly be supportive, conveniently forgetting they laughed at you before. A few will resent you quietly while smiling to your face. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to shame them. You simply file that information and continue. But your influence will never be complete if you ignore one thing: how you're perceived before you even speak. Your reputation is being written every day, in how you enter rooms, in how you hold your body, in how you respond to pressure, in what you tolerate. Most men drift through life letting everyone else define them. One group thinks he's a joke, another thinks he's a nice guy, another sees him as a backup plan. He never stops to ask, what do I actually want to be known for? What story do I want my presence to tell? You begin to take control. You straighten your posture, not as a fake performance, but as a daily reminder. I am allowed to take up space. You make eye contact long enough to show you're present, but not so long that it becomes a plea for connection. You stop nervously filling silence with self-deprecating jokes. You wear clothes that respect you. You move slightly slower, more intentional, like a man who is not rushing for permission to exist. You become careful with access. Not everyone gets your inner world. Not everyone gets your unfiltered thoughts. Not everyone gets invited deeply into your plans. You stop trauma dumping to strangers. Stop oversharing with people who haven't earned your trust. Stop feeding gossip by explaining your every move. Mystery becomes part of your power. People feel your boundaries before you ever state them. And behind all of this, behind your inner transformation, your mental fortress, your strategic silence, your recalibrated trust, your rising reputation, there's one engine driving it all: discipline. Without discipline, everything else is theory. Men love to talk about confidence, but true confidence is the natural side effect of watching yourself keep promises to yourself over and over again. Every time you say you'll do something and you actually do it, even when you're tired, even when no one is watching, you cast a vote for the identity of a man who can be relied on. By others, yes, but most importantly, by himself. Discipline is not just waking up early for the sake of it. It's waking up when you said you would because you decided your word matters more than your mood. Discipline is not grinding until burnout. It's consistently honoring your standards in health, work, relationships, and personal growth. It's taking care of your body because you refuse to live with avoidable weakness. It's controlling your habits because you refuse to be governed by addictions. It's saying no to distractions because you've finally decided your time is worth more than entertainment. Most men quit on themselves in private and wonder why life quits on them in public. They hit snooze on their goals. They break small promises and then expect to be strong in big moments. But the man who trains himself daily, mentally, physically, emotionally, becomes someone else entirely. He is calm when others panic because he's been here in his mind 100 times. He pushes through discomfort because he's spent years making peace with the feeling of not wanting to, but doing it anyway. And people around him feel it. They can't always articulate it, but they know. This man is solid. This man is not easily shaken. This man does what he says. Add all of this together and you arrive at a different category of existence, becoming truly unstoppable. Unstoppable doesn't mean you never fall. It means when you do, you don't stay a second longer than necessary on the ground. It doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means pain doesn't define your identity. It doesn't mean you don't care about others. It means you care deeply, but you no longer worship their approval like a god. People can criticize you. You'll evaluate, extract any useful feedback, and discard the rest. People can leave you. You'll grieve, but you won't crumble, because you never again confuse abandonment with your worth. People can doubt you. You'll let them, while you continue your work in silence. Machiavelli said that the mightiest warrior is the one who conquers himself. When you conquer your need to explain, your addiction to being liked, your fear of being alone, your slave-like dependence on external validation, you become that warrior. You don't isolate yourself from the world, you simply become very selective. You decide who gets access to your time, who gets access to your energy, who gets access to your intimacy, who gets access to your mind. You stop handing out front-row seats in your life to people who wouldn't even stand for you in theirs. And yes, your new strength will be tested. Old dynamics will try to drag you back. People you used to please will poke at your boundaries to see if they're real. Old habits will whisper, "Just this once, just keep the peace, just stay small. It's easier." You will feel the pull to apologize when you've done nothing wrong, to justify yourself to someone who doesn't deserve context, to tolerate what your soul is screaming against. That's the moment of truth. That's the moment you either reinforce the old version or you prove, to yourself more than anyone, that your transformation is real. You began this journey as one man, the man who over-explains, who tolerates too much, who begs quietly for respect. If you followed this all the way here, something in you is no longer satisfied with that role. You've glimpsed another way to live, as a man whose uncertain self is finally being starved, whose mind is guarded by a fortress instead of panic, whose silence cuts through manipulation, whose disappointments have become education instead of anchors, whose critics are drowned out by excellence, whose reputation works for him instead of against him, whose discipline has forged an identity that doesn't buckle under pressure. Now, this isn't just information. This is a turning point, if you decide it is. The world will try to drag you back into comfort. People close to you may mock your changes because your growth exposes their stagnation. Old programming will tempt you with the lie that it's safer to just go back to being predictable, apologetic, easy. Don't go back. You don't live there anymore. From this moment forward, you have a choice. Continue being the man others can walk over, or become the man whose presence changes the atmosphere of every room he enters. Continue explaining your worth, or become the man whose worth is so clearly embodied that no explanation is necessary. Continue hoping for respect, or become the man who expects it and receives it because he first gave it to himself. If this hit you anywhere deep, I want you to do more than just nod and move on. I want you to take a public stand, even if it's just a sentence. Go to the comments and write this affirmation. I refuse to stay weak. I am becoming unstoppable. Write it exactly like that. Then, right below it, tell me what part of this spoke to you the most and why. Was it the idea of the two selves inside you fighting for control? The concept of turning your mind into a fortress instead of a prison? The power of strategic silence? The way disappointment can actually reveal your strength? The discipline piece that you know you've been avoiding? Be specific. Tell me where you are right now. Tell me what you've been tolerating. Tell me what boundary you know you need to enforce. Tell me what kind of man you've decided to become from this day forward. Your transformation doesn't become real just because you heard these words. It becomes real the moment you decide, declare, and act. So comment your affirmation. Comment your hardest truth from this. Comment the shift you're about to make. This is your line in the sand. You are not here to beg. You are not here to be managed. You are not here to be endlessly explained away. You are here to build, to influence, to stand. You are unbreakable. You are unbending. You are becoming unstoppable. Now go prove it, and start by telling the world exactly who you're choosing to be in the comments below.